Welcome back to the channel. Today we are reacting to a video by Cara Nicole and it's about luxury poverty. This should be interesting. Let's get straight into it.
Sometimes it feels like everyone is rich these days, splurging on hauls, buying the newest Apple releases, going on vacation after vacation, and yet at the exact same time, it feels like everyone is struggling financially, barely making rent, unable to afford a home, drowning in medical or student debt. It's confusing. How can both of these things feel so true, that everyone is rolling in money and at the same time has no money?
Well, I mean, that's simple. You can just go on credit. You just use your credit card and you go on these holidays and then you're paying interest into the ether. So from the outside looking in, it looks like you have a lot of money and it seems that way, but in actual fact, you're drowning in debt. I mean, it's very easy.
My theory on why that contradiction is the reality these days, and that is that we are drowning in something called luxury poverty. Luxury poverty is this paradox where people can't afford financial basics like savings or a home, but they're still buying little luxuries like a big screen TV or a designer handbag because those feel more attainable. And because of this, an illusion is created where people are seemingly rich and poor at the exact same time. I came across the phrase luxury poverty after seeing several videos pop up on the topic, and as soon as I learned what luxury poverty meant, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. This is something that ties so perfectly into the money, media, and culture conversations that I have on this channel. So today we are going to dive into luxury poverty. More specifically, I want to talk about how luxury poverty is a trap that is destroying us, how this whole thing came to be, and how luxury poverty is perpetuated both by bad money habits as well as structural problems like rising costs. And while we're talking about luxury, something that people often think of as a luxury is therapy and self-growth, because things like that feel more abstract and often they can come with a high price tag, but luckily that is not always the case. I actually found a really fascinating breakdown of family budgets from 1903 to 1956, and it is wild to see what their money was going to. Like, look at this row of Philadelphia working men in the year 1923, so almost a century ago. Looking at the chart, you can see that they were spending on average 30% of their budget on food, 25% of their budget on rent, almost 20% of their budget on clothing, and less than 3% of their budget on healthcare. Now, if you're really good about keeping track of your budget, you might see those numbers and be dropping your jaw in disbelief right now. And if you are, it's probably because you realize what I'm getting at, which is basically that those numbers look so different than how we spend money today. Let's compare by looking at food.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Like, okay, so I'm a fashion journalist by trade. So I know for a fact that there was a point in time when a high percentage of people's income was spent on clothing, but that was because there was an understanding that clothing was really high quality and people didn't really buy loads of clothing in terms of clothing items, but they would buy staple pieces. So they would buy this, what would be seen as an expensive jacket now, relatively, on a trench coat or a jumper that when it, has a hole, they are literally going to put a fix to it. And they had a fix to everything, and they were very much, it was this mending culture of mending your clothing. So there was a collective understanding that we get what we pay for. And I think even these phrases like you get what you pay for, maybe things you've heard from your grandparents, these come from their generation because a lot of these things were actually true. So it makes a lot of sense. And it also makes sense because during their time, such a high proportion of their spending was not going towards housing. If you think of the statistics that we've seen in London, for example, where it used to be 4 times the average income was the average cost of a home. Now it's more like 10, 11, sometimes even more times than that. So people just spending way more money on different necessities like living, like bills, electricity bills, rent, mortgages. So just by virtue of that, you're just naturally going to spend a lower percentage of your income on things like clothing, on things like other luxuries. It's just the reality of what it is. Unless, of course, you're using a credit card and you're going into debt to do it, which I'm sure is a point you'll make in this video.
First, as a reminder, a century ago, we saw about 30% of the average worker budget going to food. And nowadays, the lowest income households spend about 33% of their income on food. Pretty similar. That being said, the middle income folks nowadays only spend about 14% of their income on food, and the highest earners these days spend less than 10% of their budget on food. But how do the other categories look here? So let's look at rent next. Back in the day, we saw 25% of a worker's budget going to rent, but
there's no way now. I don't know what the number is. It's going to be way higher than 24.8%. There's no way that most people are not spending more than like up to like 40%, if not more, on rent. But let's see.
Nowadays, that number is higher. Different studies and surveys show different numbers, but even with all that variety, the stats show the rent to income ratio nowadays being higher than 25%. According to a study by badcredit.org, in 2022, about 30% of people's income went to rent. And cities all over the US are seeing the amount spent on rent increasing. According to Moody's, a place like New York City has a 68.5% rent to income ratio, which is insanely high. That means that you would be spending over half of your income just to have a roof over your head. And according to an article by Forbes last
Yeah, I think my opinion is skewed because obviously I'm from London, but New York is kind of the same. She said over 50%. I said 40%, but even in that stat, certain places were in the mid 30s, early 30s. So I think it just depends where you live. But yeah, 24.8% of your income on rent sounds like a dream.
year, people are now spending 42% of their income on rent. Whatever source you use, the numbers are really high, certainly higher than the 25% of budget that we saw in our old budgeting records from last century. But that is not even the craziest piece. My friends, clothing and healthcare, the next two categories we're about to talk about, those are the categories that blew my mind. In our budget from 100 years ago, the average worker was spending almost 20% of their income on clothing. Now, I do feel like folks dressed pretty snazzy back then, no doubt, but 20% of your budget, that is crazy. If you make $50,000 a year and spent that much on clothing, you would be spending $10,000 a year on shopping, or $833 a month. That's a lot of shopping.
It's not that crazy, and I'll tell you, this is my area of expertise, so I can speak to it. It's not crazy because there wasn't any such thing as cheap clothing back then. Like what we call fast fashion now, like we have different categories of fast fashion now. We have ultra fast fashion, which is Shein, Temu, that sort of stuff. We have fast fashion, which is H&M. Then we have more luxury fast fashion, which is more Zara. All of these things did not exist. The cheap brands then were brands like Gap, which is actually really good quality. So relative to income, back then, even fast fashion wasn't super cheap. You still had to spend quite a bit of money. So it seems crazy to her now, but that's only because we have these ultra cheap options that weren't available back then. And we're suffering for it because people wear clothing once and it disintegrates because it's so badly made. So there was kind of like a collective understanding, like I said earlier, this collective understanding that the quality of whatever garment you buy is going to be higher. Therefore, we can spend a lot of money on this clothing and they are justified to charge these high prices. So to someone like me who works in the fashion industry, it doesn't make sense. It makes historical sense that that's the case, that people are spending such a high proportion of their income on clothing. We're just so used to having ultra cheap clothing now, but that wasn't the reality before.
But here's where luxury poverty comes in. The price of clothing, just like the price of many consumer goods in the last century, have gone way down. You can now buy
Okay, so she said it. Great. She said
some
it.
clothes for less than a fast food meal cost. You can get a whole new wardrobe with one paycheck. It's the same as how nowadays you can buy a screen TV for less than $100, whereas in the
Do you know what's funny about this though? So the funny thing about buying ultra cheap fashion is you spend more money in the long run. I buy certain items, but once again, I work in the fashion industry, so I have a certain understanding of things. And fashion or clothing is one of those things that people think is not really that serious, so they don't take it seriously, and they end up wasting unnecessary money. So for example, you can buy a super high quality t-shirt for $20 to $25. Now, to most people, spending $25 on a plain t-shirt, it seems like it's a really high price, but that $25 t-shirt, you can wear it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years and it looks pristine every time you wear it. People are like, I love the fit of that t-shirt. Where did you get it from? Why does it look that way? How do you dress? People are like, you're so stylish, but I just don't understand why. And it's just a t-shirt and the fit and the way it draped because it's well made. Versus people are like, oh, I just need a quick, cheap t-shirt. And then they buy a t-shirt for $2. And then after 2 wears, the neckline is slacking, it's bubbling, you can't lint roll it anymore, it's stretched. And then you end up buying so many of those t-shirts. And when you do the maths at the end of the year, the person that just bought the high quality t-shirt essentially saved money.
It might cost you weeks of pay to buy a TV or radio. Or how in the past, a plane ticket was only affordable to the very wealthy and could cost half of what it costs to buy a new car. In today's dollars, that would be like buying a round-trip flight from New York to LA for $25,000. Back in the day, a plane ride, a TV, or a new outfit were pure luxury. People dressed up for flights because of this. But now these things are incredibly affordable and thus more accessible. I know personally, the airport is lucky if they even get me in jeans rather than sweatpants. I love me a travel outfit. So on one hand, we see these physical markers of wealth like technology, clothing, and travel, things that you can take a picture of and show off, as getting cheaper for the masses over the last century. We spend less than 3% of our budgets to apparel these days versus the 20% that we saw in the past. But critical costs that aren't so easy to see at quick glance, like owning a home or paying off your hospital bills, those are going up. Remember when I said that these categories blew my mind? Clothing was surprising, but healthcare is the one that I was really shocked by.
So this is what confuses me about this generation, and I'm Gen Z, so I'm talking about myself too. I don't do this, but I'm saying my generation. I don't understand how everything is harder these days. You're paying more of a proportion of your income on rent and on necessities like food and healthcare. It's very difficult to understand why people go into debt doing things that are not necessary. Is it because people feel like I'm never going to be able to afford this ever, so I might as well bite the bullet and just, if I have to deal with the consequences of it, I'll deal with it later, and people just, that's the mentality they're going into it with? Or what is it? Because it's like, I would rather fix my financial situation completely before I do anything that's related to luxury. But then I have friends that might say, you're only in your 20s once, you have to live your 20s. But I just don't like the idea of putting myself in such a big financial hole in my 20s that when I'm in my 30s, I'm just struggling the whole time. I don't think it's worth it, personally. So I don't really understand the mentality, but if you're watching, please explain it to me.
Our average worker budget had only 2.7% going to health. 2.7%. If we had that nowadays, that would be like a person making $50,000 a year, only having to spend $1,350 for the whole year on healthcare, their insurance, their doctor appointments, their medication. For reference, I once had an ambulance ride because of an allergy attack, and my 15-minute ambulance ride alone cost about that much, and that was...
Yeah, when it comes to healthcare, the US is a scam. America is a scam when it comes to healthcare. I've had stories from my friends. I have a lot of American friends, and they tell me that sometimes they've had situations, like one of my friends, he's from Kentucky, and he was telling me that his dad had a leg injury or something along those lines, and he had to drive himself to the hospital. He wouldn't call an ambulance because he couldn't afford the ambulance payout. I think he was telling me it would be $800. $800 for some necessary care to take someone to the hospital in their time of need is insane to me. It's just outrageous.
After insurance. Nowadays, unsurprisingly, we are allocating way more of our budgets to healthcare costs. Want to guess how much? Put your guesses in the comments below. Let's see how you do. According to a RAND study from the start of 2020, the average household is spending 18.7% of average household income on healthcare costs. And unfortunately,
so that's the thing, you have no money left, because if you're spending 18.7% on healthcare, depending where you are, if you're in New York, you're spending like 60% of your money on rent, most of your money is gone. We haven't factored in food, other bills like energy bills, water, traveling to work especially, that's essential. Your money is gone. There's no money to do anything else, quite literally.
Unfortunately, the burden hits way harder the lower your income. Quote, households in the bottom fifth of income groups pay an average of 33.9% of their income toward healthcare. That is over a third of some people's budgets going just to healthcare, compared to the less than 3% that we saw a century ago. Again, this right here is luxury poverty. It's our needs getting more and more expensive while we get tempted with cheaper and cheaper ones. And we are getting very, very good at getting tempted these days. Billions, if not trillions of dollars have been poured into figuring out how to hijack our attention, compare ourselves to others, and impulse purchase things beyond our means. We overspend on things that we don't need all of the time. According to a LendingTree survey, quote, some 21% of people who are in the paycheck to paycheck situation say non-essential spending is to blame. And to make things worse, the items that we want and we get these days, from new kitchen appliances to TVs to t-shirts, are often lower in quality. I made a whole video earlier.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier about the quality. So you're worse off every time you buy this cheap clothing. You're always worse off. Always.
About planned obsolescence and the way that many products fall apart so that you have to buy more. If you want to go watch that one, go check it out after you watch this video. But planned obsolescence adds a whole new level to this luxury poverty situation because more and more we are just building up the appearance of wealth. Like little accessories we get to tout to look like we have money, but when those accessories aren't even working, well, now we just have props. We're like actors in a play at that point. I was trying to think of an analogy for luxury poverty, and here's what I came up with. Luxury poverty is like having a gorgeous house whose foundation is absolutely rotting from the inside. The walls look polished, the exterior is picture perfect, and so from the outside, you would think it's your dream home, but behind the surface, everything is unstable. It looks good, but it can't hold up. Similarly, a lot of
Aren't a lot of new builds like that? I've been seeing a lot of videos surrounding new builds, especially in the US, stateside, and how some of them don't even pass inspections. They're moldy. This is just after construction. No one has lived in these properties, new builds. They're moldy, the wiring is off. It's just everything now is just so badly made. It's really annoying. It's really, really annoying. Everything now is way more expensive and a lot worse made. I don't understand.
People's financial situations are that right now. We might see shopping hauls and vacations, new iPhones, and in some cases, you might even see a McMansion thrown in there. But behind those material markers of luxury is a whole lot of financial struggle. Because here's the reality. Nearly 2/3 of Americans reportedly live paycheck to paycheck. Credit card debt has hit record highs with delinquency rates soaring. In many US cities, home prices have risen faster than paychecks, making it incredibly hard for anyone who isn't a high earner to buy a house. And healthcare is projected to eat up 1/5 of the entire US economy. In one sense, people are surrounded by abundance. We have so much stuff. We have so much luxury. But in another sense, we are struggling with growing scarcity. Luxury poverty reminds me a lot of the cyberpunk genre, aka high tech, low life. We have dazzling consumer technology at relatively affordable price points. Smartphones, VR headsets, AI tools, streaming services, things that past generations couldn't even imagine. It's honestly like magic, but at the same time, the core necessities of life, stable housing, affordable healthcare.
But like, who needs all of these things? I think a lot of people convince themselves that they need so many things that they don't necessarily need. And sometimes it's not our fault. I'm not gonna say it's always our fault. Sometimes it is just the marketing is so good. These algorithms are literally designed to keep and hold our attention and to keep us scrolling. So it's not really our fault when they've got it down to a science, literally. But it's just, we don't need all these things. I don't know why people feel like they need to buy all of this. It's the feeling that they need to, that's the big issue.
Childcare, a secure future, feel like they are slipping further and further out of reach for so many people. And you know what? Some of that is due to individuals overspending on flashy products all the time. I talk about overconsumption a lot on this channel, and it is a huge problem of our generation. We buy way too much stuff, and that in turn puts us into awful financial.
Not the Labubu. That came and went so quickly, didn't it? It's crazy how fast it came and went.
At the same time, we also have problems with rising healthcare and housing costs that eat up so much of people's budgets. It is ridiculous, and I worry that if we don't make major changes to these areas of our economy, we are screwing ourselves over for the future. Because luxury poverty is destructive. It tricks us into thinking things are fine because the surface looks shiny, when underneath the foundation is cracking. And for real people, that translates to unhealthy stress, growing debt, and social unrest that can create a whole lot of anger and hostility. If we allow luxury poverty to keep growing, it's like trying to live on a diet of cotton candy. It feels really sweet in the moment, it's gonna give you a little sugar high, but long term, it's gonna destroy our health. So if we wanna put an end to luxury poverty, we need to rethink wealth and rethink how we take care of others. We cannot keep measuring ourselves by what we can show off, because real wealth, it's about financial security and peace of mind, and ensuring that that type of wealth is accessible to more people is foundational to a functioning society. But what do you guys think? Have you seen examples of luxury poverty in your...
Okay, great video. Great video. To summarize, I just think a big issue is peer pressure and marketing. Marketing convinces people that they need things that they don't. and peer pressure convinces people that they need things that they don't, against the better judgment of themselves. That makes them make decisions where they're wasting money and they're buying things they don't need, but they are just thinking about the social proof that buying some of these items affords them, which I think is a big issue. For example, I will only ever drive a Volkswagen Golf, which is not even like a bad car. It's actually quite a nice car, but I'm only ever going to drive that until I'm a millionaire. I don't see any reason why I should be driving any kind of luxury car when my net worth is not over $1 million, which it's not close to now, because it's like you can't afford those cars otherwise. And you're just going to be paying insane APRs, being so much debt. You might end up in negative equity. It's just, this is what I mean. People just, they get convinced that they need things they don't. But I don't know. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this topic.